Let's bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent and host of KCDC on MSNBC, Casey Hunt. Casey, so we begin another week with the government shutdown. Where do we stand? What are you looking for today?
The longest shutdown in history, and it really has no end in sight, Joe. I thought, one interesting thing over the weekend was Lindsey Graham suddenly arguing, hey, why don't we reopen parts of the government while we continue this negotiation over border security, which, puts him in a camp with a lot of Democrats. I think it's a reflection of some of the growing frustrations behind the scenes of a lot of Senate Republicans that this is dragging onward because, it's affecting millions of Americans. Obviously, those 800,000 people, lots of pop-up food banks here in the D.C. area, just really heartbreaking video, but also, food inspections. People can't get mortgages. Those are things that members of Congress, they were all home this weekend. They were not working here. They're hearing from their constituents about it, but, the reality remains the same, which is that, barring some sort of catastrophic event, either shutdown related or I would also argue possibly Mueller related, there's no way Republicans are going to repudiate the president with a veto-proof majority. So it really just comes down to what the president is willing to sign. And right now it doesn't look like he's ready to budge. Well,
Nick Contasori, of course, the president puts out so many false narratives in his Twitter feed, but one thing that was out this past weekend that we ought to correct today is the president saying that Democrats didn't think DACA was important enough to include in negotiations. It's worth noting Democrats did include DACA in negotiations the last time, and it was vetoed by Stephen Miller. Is there any talk of the possibility of a grand immigration deal, or is that something Donald Trump doesn't want?
Well, Joe, there's always talk. The problem here is precisely the thing we were talking about earlier, his weakness politically. This entire holdup is because he is too weak politically to actually advance his policy, the wall, the conventional way. His only hope of getting it done is to hold something hostage and jam it into this funding bill. And that's why he's sticking with it. He understands, I think, that this is a new Washington where he can't get this done in any other way. And by the same token, it's the exact reason why Chuck and Nancy, as he calls them, are holding so firm. If they let him do it now, he will keep throwing unpopular policies into these negotiations to jam them in, because it is the only way he can progress in this new Washington, Joe.
Joe, can I jump in on DACA?
Oh, yeah, go
really,
ahead.
Just
go
quickly,
ahead.
I asked the vice president directly about this. He came up and did a roundtable with Capitol Hill reporters at the end of last week, and he said specifically that the president is waiting for the courts on DACA. So the president's tweet about Democrats taking it off the table is entirely incorrect.
And it's, in fact, the Republicans and Donald Trump who's taken it off the table. David Ignatius, I just wonder, how long can this president hold on? How long will his numbers even stay at 24% supporting him here when more and more TSA lines get shut down and Americans learn that Congress could just pass a funding bill that would take care of those TSA workers, and Congress could just pass a funding bill that could take care of FDA food inspections, that Congress could actually pass bills that had nothing to do with this wall, and those parts of government could continue forward?
Joe, I'm like you. I keep waiting for the crack in Republican support when people see the real cost of this. I mean, you begin to worry about flying if air traffic controllers aren't getting paid or TSA personnel aren't being paid. It gets to be a dangerous world. So when's that crack going to come? It hasn't yet. The president's playing this all-or-nothing strategy. He's got to have a total win, or he feels he's coming out of this with nothing. He said over the weekend, elections have consequences, going back to November 2016. It's true, elections do have consequences, and we just had one in November 2018. And the Democrats took control of the Congress. And you know what? That's the thing that Trump doesn't seem to understand, is he has to negotiate now. He doesn't run all the government anymore. If he's going to come out of this, he's got to do a deal.
And David, for a man who wrote a book called The Art of the Deal and used that as his branding device for decades, he has backed himself into a corner. Everybody in the administration knows he's backed himself into a corner. There is no deal to be had. His numbers are plummeting. Democrats don't feel the need to give an inch on this wall. So where does it end up for Donald Trump and the Republican Party?
Well, he's insisting on the 100% deal, that he gets every dollar of the $5.6 billion that he was demanding. And he's not going to get that. And his threat is, I am so reckless and irresponsible, I am going to take the government down. Just watch me. And at some point, reasonable people say, Mr. President can't do that, and then they intervene, and then I assume he'll come away and say, I got to win because I stuck tough. You know, it's this all or nothing attitude that he has brought to deal making that's so frightening.
In Casey Hunt this week also, William Barr is going to go to Capitol Hill, the president's nominee to be the next attorney general. He's going to be facing, obviously, many tough questions. What's at the top of the list?
Well, I think you're going to see Democrats, several of whom on this committee are likely 2020 candidates who I think are going to be trying to make a mark here. They're going to focus most likely on a private memo that William Barr wrote in June of 2017 about the Mueller investigation, arguing that it was fatally misconceived, I believe was the phrase that he used. That has generated a lot of concern. Even the new chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Lindsey Graham, has said he wants something of an explanation on it. Senator Feinstein, the ranking member, has already asked him about this behind closed doors. She said that she wants to get him on the record on that. I was almost expecting this hearing to be slightly sleepy, but then the news over the weekend from the New York Times and the Washington Post, that sort of 1-2 punch of stories, I think is really going to elevate this and make it potentially pretty contentious. Now, on the flip side, William Barr is supposed to replace Matt Whitaker, the acting attorney general, who Democrats think has way more problems than William Barr. So perhaps that's an argument in favor of moving this along. At the end of the day, though, Republicans don't show signs of cracks here, so we do expect him in the long run to be confirmed.
All right. And coming up, by the way, the president is tweeting this morning that Nancy, Cryan, Chuck, and Democrats are to blame for the shutdown. I don't think people are buying this.
Well, actually, Mika, I don't know if I brought this up yet or not this morning, but less than 1 in 4 Americans support the president and his shutting down of the government. That's 24%. It's not Nancy that's crying. It's a lot of Republicans on Capitol Hill who are seeing their numbers go even lower.
Plus, after the firing of James Comey, the FBI was so alarmed that it began investigating whether President Trump was working for Russia. The New York Times' Michael Schmidt joins us with that new report. We'll also talk to the Washington Post's Greg Miller, who wrote the other bombshell piece from the weekend about Trump's efforts to conceal his conversations with Vladimir Putin. Morning Joe will be right back with another packed hour. Stay with us.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.